Shalom, and welcome to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth Am, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles. This is a recording of our weekly Rashi study class with Rabbi Rebecca Schatz.
We're going to jump right into verse 14. And if we have a reader, we're in the middle of this this saga here of where specifically Esther, but where also all of these women are during this moment of with or with not the king, before and after. Someone read 14 for us? Yeah, Alan. And then Leonard, you can read the next verse.
בערב היא באה, ובבוקר היא שבה אל בית הנשים שני, על יד שעשה גז, סריס המלך שומר הפלגשים, לא תבוא עוד אל המלך, כי אם חפץ בא המלך ונקראה בשם.
Okay. Very, very well read. Can you tell us what happened here?
Well, in the evening that she would come and she would leave in the morning to the second harem house of harem, and which was in charge of Shazgaz, the king's eunuch, who was the guardian or keeper of the Pelagashim, I guess they call it here concubines. Okay. But she would not be able to go again to see the Melech unless the king called out and just wanted her. And then the king would call out to her Vishem by her name.
Okay. So I want to pause for a second because this came up quite a bit in the last week's class in terms of the illustration that we were pointing out in this book that I have in front of me, which I'll show in just a moment. And I don't know if Rick is going to want to share some trope around this, but the way in which this is written, and I just kind of divided it for us to see the drama here. Ba'erev hi va'a. There's really a pause there, right? That could be a comma, a semicolon. Rick can decide what the punctuation would be, but there's definitely a pause. It's a dramatic end to what is happening. So in the evening, she would enter, we assume, into the king's chambers, and in the morning she would leave. And again, Rick can do more on this if he chooses, but all of those tropes are not typical regular tropes, right? We are seeing this as a very dramatic. If you're writing a piece of music, you would imagine that these would be musical notations that would allow for the drama to come through on those words, even if you didn't know what they meant, right? So an illustration of what is happening here. And again, we can pass around this graphic novel if you'd like, but we can see, and Larry put this out last week, I'll just reiterate what he said. The picture, which is a very basic illustration, is one that, and I'll show it to Zoom in a second, don't worry, everyone, is one that is extremely, thought, but it's also interpretive, right? There's really not much to see, but it says a lot because there's not much to see. So what the illustrator seems to be expressing to us is that a lot happened, probably that was not seen, and that a lot was also left up to the imagination as to what was going on, and probably also to how she felt, which we don't often talk about, right? But the idea that we don't actually hear from her as to how this all happened. It's possible that in Stevie's book it's a similar illustration. I don't know, but in the one that Leonard is currently looking at, and the one that actually Diane, can I show the Zoom people? So this, I need to take my blur off. Give me 1 second here. Okay, so just to show, let me stop. Wow, I'm really very good at technology, I promise. Okay, so here are the pictures that I'm referring to, right? So she enters, which is the darker of the two photos, I think. I can't actually see because I'm showing it to all of you. And then she leaves in the morning, and that's this over there photo. Sorry, I'm trying to straighten it out there. So it's a very interesting way of noticing. There are not many words here to describe what's happening, but there clearly was a lot that went on that should have been known by all the readers. The second thing that I want to point out, and then I'm happy to take comments, is that this last piece here is that she would not go again to the king, but if he wanted her to return, it doesn't actually say that she would, but if he wanted her to return, it seems as though she was summoned in such a way that the answer was, I'll be there in a moment. So that's that last sentence there. I just want to make sure that was very clear. And it's possible that the lo tavo od el hamelech is not, and then she never went back. Moving on, it might be that she never wanted to return, right? It might be a stronger reminder to us, especially using the word tavo when ba'a has been used before. It's possible that what the author is getting at is that this was not something that was wanted by her to return to, not just that she didn't have access to return. Okay.
That seems contrary to the whole purpose, though, because she's supposed to, that comes later, that she wants to return in order to save the Jews
to his
Shushan.
chambers. Not to his chambers, just to the palace.
No, but she says that later on, and I don't remember exactly what it says, but it talks about saying that unless he actually calls out for me to come to him, then it won't happen. And you're
That's here too. Yeah.
But when you're summoned, if you're summoned and you're going to be doing it to save the people, one would think that would imply being with the king as well, not just being called around.
I'm saying different things. All I'm saying is that I think the way in which it is written here, it's not just implying that she didn't at this point go back, but rather that it would be hard for her to want to. So in the case of what you're sharing, it's possible that it was a necessity for her to, in order to save people. You and I aren't saying different things. I was just explaining it based off of this context versus the future.
You're talking about Esther specifically, right?
Yes.
Right.
All the words. It's not even
There's just the one, right?
Yeah.
Okay. There are lots of other hands. So Diane, Larry, Joel. Did someone else have a hand? Barry. Oh. We can also bring that microphone that's all the way down there a little bit.
Two things. One is the size of the woman in these pictures. She is very tiny and the door is very big. And it's like this was something that was operating on her over which she had little control. It's like dramatic. Two is the end of the verse that the king couldn't just say, yeah, I want the one I had last night. He had to identify her by name, which is strange. I don't know what it means, but it just seems strange.
Yeah, that's a very important point. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about Alter, who has a unique interpretation of part of this verse. But before I do, to me, you guys can agree or not agree. This is the general description of what's going on. So there's this whole group of virgins that have been assembled, and they're assembled in the house of Haggai, who is the eunuch who's in charge of the virgins, where they're waiting. And then this describes they get taken out of the virgin's house, taken to the king. He does what he will with her. Now they go to a second house which is Shashgaz. He's the eunuch that's in charge of that one, where they wait until the king, the ex-virgins, right, where they wait until perhaps he will think, gee, she was good, I'll call her again, right? That's my understanding. That's not what Alter thinks. Alter's translation is, in the evening she would come, and in the morning she would go back to the women's house again in the hands of Shashgaz, the king's eunuch keeper of the concubines. And the rest of the verse is not relevant to my point. His comment is, in the evening she would come, and in the morning she would go back. The selection process then comes down to trial by sexual intercourse, with which of these virgins will the king be truly satisfied? The image of the king as the indefatigable sexual athlete betting virgins night after night is intrinsically comic, but it is also undercut by a sly hint that points in the opposite direction. I'm not sure what that hint is. And then he has a riff on the word sheni. Again, seemingly second. It looks odd. If it really modifies house, it should have a definite article in front of it. Hasheni, right? Which it does not, and would be strange for there to be two different harems. This translation amends to the word shenit again, or a second time. But Alter doesn't take into account the fact that the first harem is being run by Haggai, and this one by Shashgaz. So I think it's more of, Alter's usually interesting and on the mark, but I think he blew it this time. What's the difference?
Meaning it should,
instead of a bayit sheni,
so if it were to, it should have said, if we were referring to the second house, it should have said El Beit Hanashim Hasheni.
I wonder what Rashi has to say about that.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, I want to point one thing out. First of all, I think it's very interesting when we hear from a commentator that we feel, to Larry's point, like it seems like there might be a missing piece here, and it's interesting to recognize that, and we do this in this class all the time, that Alter read the whole Megillah most likely before he made this comment, and so it's possible that later on, I can't think of what it would be, but it's possible that later on there's some qualifier that he's actually reading back into this point that makes it such that it seems confusing to us right now, but that it'll be less confusing or at least more clarified later on. I don't know that that's the case because I can't think about a point later on in the Megillah where that would be the case, but I just want to point out because I think it is an interesting, when we're thinking about commentators, an interesting way to remember that our commentators, just like us, know the whole story and not just verse 14 of chapter 2. I was going to say one other thing about what you said, Diane. Oh, the part about the name also kind of goes back to the conversation that Alan and I were having about, this isn't about Esther, right? But it is about the women that were singled out. And potentially this is what Alter is referring to, that the women who were singled out, whether it was because of their sexual competence or because it was of their beauty, that he knew those particular women by name, that it wasn't just, the brunette with the straight hair, right? It was there was something about the woman where he actually then wanted to know her name to then call her back. So that's an interesting thing to keep in mind. And whether or not a woman wanted him to know her name or not is left to everybody's interpretation. But it seems as though that was a very important piece to how the king then called back to people. Okay, Joel.
I did. First, my comment to yours was,
Yeah.
I don't know if Bashem means specifically by name. I would translate it as specifically. You called her specifically, okay, as opposed to just. Is there a word in Hebrew for specifically?
Yeah. Back then. Yeah, I don't know that the right Hebrew would have been like BDU, right? Like to a point. I don't know. That's a good question. I just always wonder, like when using a word like Shem, like it so clearly means
Right.
name. I totally hear what you're saying. I'm not disagreeing. I wonder why they would have used that if they could have used something else.
But my original comment was whether ba is the verb of bia.
Yes, I was gonna get there.
Okay.
Yeah.
What, I'm sorry, what?
You can explain it. I was gonna say it, but you can explain it.
Bia is means actual sexual the sexual act. So it could either specifically or it could be just hinting at that when it says ba.
And Bia is one of them. So just to add to that, I was going to say this in a few minutes, but just to add to that, there are 3 different ways that a woman can be acquired for marriage. One is Bia, the other one is Shtar, the other one is Kesef. But the idea of Bia is consecration of a marriage through sexual intercourse, and the idea of using this word, that was my first thought as well, that it's not just that she came into his chambers, but there's a sexual implication to what she was doing, and they're using a word that is implied to mean and to at least euphemize isn't the exact word, I'm like symbolize that there was some kind of sexual intercourse. Okay, I see people around the room. Barry's been waiting, and then Leonard, and then Rachel. And then Rick will get to you at some point.
So just sort of continuing in this theme and looking at the interesting troping, how this begins. This is a transformative event for each of the women who go in. They come in as virgins, and they come out as concubines. There's an ownership. They're now property. They're property of the king now. And the theme of the name, when you have somebody's name, there's a control aspect to it. So he is control of them by name. So it's transformative.
I think Leonard has a microphone, so I'll take that one back.
According to the dictionary, bia doesn't mean intercourse until post-biblical Hebrew. So in other words,
Well, there's no way that's true, because Bia is post-biblical Hebrew.
right. So in other words,
Oh, sorry. I was thinking post-rabbinic, post-biblical. Got it.
it's not used in the Bible to mean intercourse.
Correct. I don't know that this would be considered biblical Hebrew, though, in terms of timing. This is closer to rabbinic, probably Hebrew in terms of timing. Sorry, when you said biblical, I was thinking rabbinic, which just shows where my brain lies. But yeah, Bia is never used in the Torah or in Nach, as far as I know, to mean sexual intercourse. But as soon as we're getting into, maybe pick up that microphone because it's giving us feedback. As soon as the rabbis start talking about betrothal, Bia is one of the first things that we learn in terms of a way of acquiring a wife. Rachel.
I want to get back to the
Yeah.
I want to get back to the discussion of one harem or two harems.
Yeah.
Because the idea of two harems, one for the women who've not yet been to the king, and one for the women who have been with the king and are waiting for a callback, perhaps. And also, I think for some women, one night with the king is enough to have a child, and then the child becomes a variable in succession and all that stuff. But the reason I'm bringing it up is, to me, the idea of two harems makes this whole thing on a much larger scale. Are we talking about 50 women? Are we talking about 500 women in each of these two places? And
I read a lot of historical fiction, and harems for the concubines that don't get called back are exceedingly boring.
Yeah.
There's nothing to do, and there's no like social outlet the women have other than talking to one another. And there's not contact between one group and the other group.
Yeah, it's interesting. There are lots of jokes that could be made probably about what you just said in terms of no social outlet except for talking to one another. I think I would prefer that social outlet rather than being in the other harem. But it is interesting to think about in terms of these two different harems and just what did it mean in terms of who and what and where. I love that we're passing notes in class. I feel like I'm a 6th grade teacher. Do you want to share with the class, Leonard? Okay. I'm not that worried about it. Turn it over. There's a note. Oh, look up Pilag Shim. I wish that those were the notes that were being passed in 6th grade. Okay, you look that up while I call on Rick. Rick, your turn.
Hi. Well, you asked me to do something with the trope. Let me start with a compliment.
Not so under the radar. Yeah.
Let me start with a compliment. I like the way you made it like poetry there. I really like the rhyme of it and the structure with the he in the middle. Ba'erev hiva'a, uvaboker hishava. You could imagine kids making rhymes about it and like nursery rhymes, that kind of thing.
Right.
Anyway, Larry and I discovered with the Haftorah Plethora that a lot of times the Revia there, the diamond on top of Va'ah, it shows directionality sometimes. In the Megillat trope, it's one. I do it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. In Torah trope, it's 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so you could build a story around that like the little the little image of the woman in the cartoon, in the graphic novel, she goes down in order to go to the level of the king, maybe, I don't know. But then the answer, Uva Boker, that's a special trope that's very uplifting. And then Hishava, that's also uplifting. So I don't know what you could make of that. I do want to say that verse 11 in chapter 4, when Esther is saying about being called or not, the Asher Lo Yikare, it's also the same diamond when she's telling Mordechai, I have to be called. So I thought I know it's looking ahead.
Yeah, thank you.
You wanted me to do a trope thing. The rest of it, I mean, that's poetry. The rest of the sentence is prose, or it's just kind of narration. So I like the way it's structured there.
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad we got back to the trope. The last thing I was going to say this and I forgot. To Rachel's point about kids, I didn't even think about that, which I'm not sure why. But that's a really interesting point, right? That could play into some of the midrash that Larry's writing, right? That there's like a story within a story here. Like I'm sure there was at least one woman who ended up pregnant, right? I'm sure it wasn't all, but I'm sure one. Right now, obviously, there are lots of different ways to categorize sexual activity. It's possible that they don't all result in children. The way in which we're, I think, and this goes back to Joel's point, the way in which we're to assume the king was dealing with these women was sexual intercourse and not other types of sexual activity. And for that reason, Rachel's point about kids being born is actually a really fascinating one that is something that I haven't seen commentators bring up. It's possible that they have, and I just haven't seen it. But it's a really interesting to think of, just like who could have come out then of that story to write a different story about what their life was like, right? There are lots of stories, obviously not in a similar situation, but that came out of the Holocaust of women who were obviously, unfortunately, raped by soldiers who then were born and had this identity of a parent who was a Nazi, right? That's obviously not the case exactly that we are dealing with here, but it does make for a very complicated existence. And so, Rachel, thank you for bringing that up. I had never thought about that before. Yeah, Norm and then Alan. That microphone doesn't need to be too close to your face, so.
I think it's not uncommon for concubines to conceive. We certainly see that with our own ancestors.
Yeah.
And if you want to look at a relatively modern perspective on this,
Yeah.
Many of us have read Anna and the King or seen it or seen the musical based on it, The King and I.
Mm-hmm.
And in that case, there is a queen and a crown, but there are also a bunch of other children of the king.
Yeah. They sing
are
great
all
songs.
considered to be aristocrats.
Yeah.
They're all getting a relatively pleasant upbringing and significant education as compared with the general populace.
Right.
And that's probably what happened here as well. You've got people who are the child of the king.
Right.
That may make him more likely to pick one of their mothers as his queen, or they may just stay. But whether they stay in the same harem with all the women who didn't conceive, or are moved to someplace else where there's a nursery and ability to raise the children.
Yeah, it's a really.
Either I don't know, and the Megillah doesn't tell us.
That's correct.
But it isn't important. Sooner or later, he's likely to pick a queen. And as for the number of them, we know he had 127 provinces. Presumably, 127 maidens were brought to him when he instituted this draft. Maybe it was a few more, maybe it was a few less, but it's in that order of magnitude. And since they were all supposed to spend about a year before coming before him, that presumably means he's seeing 10 or 11 a month, which means, say, at least 2 a week. So it isn't, this is relevant really to the next thing we're going to read. He sees not necessarily every single night, although he might, but he certainly has these women coming to him more often than once a month.
Yeah.
Who's next?
Yeah, I heard Diane say next year's Purim spiel should be King and I.
Yes.
Yes, that's a great idea. Great idea. Okay, Alan, then Larry, then we're going to maybe get to the next verse.
Yeah, go right to Larry. There's nothing more I can say after that.
Okay, Larry. Oh, Leonard, sorry. Leonard and then Larry.
I've been asked to look up Pelegish, and you might be surprised to learn that it means concubine. However, in modern Hebrew, it also means mistress.
I think that was the word that Alan was looking for in his brain when he then read concubine, because I think most people know the word mistress in terms of Pelegish, because that's how it's also used in our texts. But I think in terms of this, like the idea of a concubine makes more sense given the activities at hand.
And then one last thing is that there's a Greek word that it's related to, pelake or pelakis, which means concubine. Greek word. It's not clear how these things are exactly related.
Well, what an interesting discussion. I'm convinced this really would sell because this would be a version of Bridgerton. For Rachel, I just want to tell you that King Rehoboam had 18 wives and 60 concubines. Okay. But Solomon had 700 wives and 300 concubines, to give you an order of magnitude. I like Norm's quantification of it. But I'm reminded of something else in terms of the concubines who became impregnated. Yeah. when we were growing up, there were what they called homes for unwed mothers.
Right, yeah.
It was a very common thing to have, and they were often run by the church, right? And so, although I don't know, I am quite certain that for the king's harem or whatever, there were separate probably homes for child raising. So we really together ought to write this whole story.
Yeah.
And then we can become gazillionaires when we sell it to Bridgerton and they use it as season whatever we're on now. Or a sequel to The King and I, whichever one works. Yeah, need to know. Yeah, yes, right. A resetting, yes. The Jewish version of The King and I. Etc. etc.
Like the red tent, but Esther.
Oh,
instead
I
of
was like the red tent and the king and I are nothing alike. Yes, right. Yes, good. Okay, Alan, you're going to read this Rashi for us that basically we've already done, but in order to stay true to this class, and then we're going to move on.
Oh, yes, excuse me. El Beit Hanashim Sheni Hasheni. That when it says second, it really means the second, describing the harem.
Great. Okay, there's not much more to say about that. Okay. What would it say? What? Just because then what Rashi is doing is he's reminding us that Sheni is in accordance to the bait. It's doing exactly what Larry said. Alter was pointing out was that in terms of like Hebrew grammar, you would need that ha if you're talking about the bait. So Rashi is just being a grammarian. Does that make sense? El Beit Hanashim Hasheni would need to be how it's written, like grammatically correctly. He's just correcting. He's editing. Who did I call on for the next verse? Was it Leonard? Yeah, great. Okay, verse 15. Moving right along. One verse every 30 minutes. That's what this class should be called. Okay.
Okay. Uvehagia tor Esther, bat Avichail dod Mordechai asher lekach la levat, lavo el hamelech lo biksha davar, ki im et asher yomar Chagai saris hamelech shomer hanashim, vetihi Esther noset chen be'inei kol roeha.
Okay. Go ahead.
And when the turn came for Esther, the daughter of Avichail, who is the uncle of Mordechai, who took her as a daughter, when it came time for her to come before the king, she didn't request anything other than what Haggai had told her. Haggai, the eunuch, and in case you forgot, he is the guardian of the women. And Esther won the admiration of everyone who saw her.
Okay. Turn back to verse 7. And for those of you on Zoom, how should I do this best? Maybe I'll copy and paste 7 so you can see them at the same time. Okay, I'm just going to copy this so that people on Zoom can see both verses at the same time, because that's what I'm going to have us do. All right. I want you to just take a look at verse 7 and take a look at verse 15 and tell me what you notice about who Esther is. So you don't need to read all of verse 15, but read all of 7 and the beginning of 15. Correct. Yeah, just a few verses before.
Avichail is mentioned by name.
Okay.
In one instance, he's viewed as an uncle. It's in the other, he is viewed as a a different. It was a different category. It says it was like the uncle of Mordechai who had adopted her as the daughter, and here it says it was his uncle's, and they call it Esther in one and Hadassah in the other.
Yeah. Great. Okay. So there's some confusion here. Whether there's confusion for them, I don't know, but there's definitely confusion for the reader and how we describe families in today's day. So Esther, according to verse 7, is the niece of Mordechai. Okay?
No, it's his uncle's daughter. That's a cousin.
Cousin. Sorry. Excuse me. Sorry. I'm confusing myself. Okay. Is the cousin of Mordechai. Okay? Everybody get that so far? Bat do. That's why I said uncle. Okay? So the cousin, they are cousins. Okay, Barry, I'm going to go through this for a while. So I see you, but I'm not going to call on you yet. It also said that she doesn't have a father or a mother. Now, that doesn't mean that she never had a father or a mother. Obviously, everybody comes from somewhere. But it seems to us from verse 7 that either she didn't know who her father and mother were, or maybe the person writing the Megillah didn't know who the father or mother were, or maybe we weren't supposed to know who the father or mother were. When we get to verse 15, one of the first things we see is that Esther is the daughter of Avichail. Okay? Which, by the way, I think we hear and we think that's a female's name. I think it's a male's name in this particular case. So at least to me, when I hear it, it reminds me of Abigail, which it isn't. It's a male name. Okay, so Esther's father, according to verse 15, was this guy Avichail, which in its own right has lots of questions around the name itself, given what it means. The father of a soldier. Anyway, and there's a lot here to unpack, which if someone wants to, they can, but I just want to stick to this for 1 second. That guy was the uncle of Mordechai. So the relationship between Mordechai and Esther doesn't seem to be necessarily different, but it definitely seems to be more distant when we get to verse 15 than it was in verse 7. Is everybody following? No. Okay. Elon is. Yeah.
See, the only difference seems to be that in verse 15 we got the name of Esther's biological
Correct.
father, and but otherwise, as near as I can tell, unless I'm missing something from not seeing the Hebrew, the relationship seems to be the same. That he adopted her, and he's her foster father.
It is exactly the same. It's exactly the same. I'm not suggesting that it's different, but I'm suggesting that in verse 7, it seems to be distant because we're not supposed to necessarily know who the father or the mother were, right? And then when we get to verse 15, we're given all this description of who these people are, making those relationships seem closer, was the point that I was trying to make. Elon, do you want to say something about it before we get to the people in the room?
It's about the verse, but not about that specifically. I mean, it's about a translation of the last part of the verse, so it can wait.
Okay, yeah. Hold on to it for just 1 second. So does everybody see what I'm saying? That in verse 7, we're focused on who Esther is versus who Esther is in accordance to all these other people. Avichail was her father, who happens to be the uncle of Mordechai, but then everything else is exactly the same, right? That he adopted her as his own daughter. Barry, I definitely see you. Just give me a few minutes. So the idea here that if we look at one versus another verse, that's a lot of the same word. If we look at these two verses in comparison and in contrast to one another, I just want you to recognize that, first of all, these are in the same chapter. It's not like we're looking at chapter 1 and chapter 5, right? We're looking at the same chapter. We're looking at 8 verses apart from one another. And it seems to be that now the story wants us to have more information on who these people were. That's my point of bringing you these two things next to one another. There's no discrepancy, just more detail now in verse 15, bringing us more into the family tree and kind of pushing us away from Esther's identity or the central theme being on Esther, which is verse 7. Everybody understand what's happening here? Okay. Thoughts, questions, comments? Okay, Barry, go ahead. You can use them. Is there a microphone over there? I'm just going to keep this one here.
So much of this have to do with sexual activity. Previously, we might have assumed that Esther was much younger than Mordecai, like he was adopting her as a young child.
Uh-huh.
But what we're getting here is that this is his older uncle, which would make her a similar age to Mordecai, which means they would potentially have could have become a sexual connection between them. But she's going to the king. So this is
What makes you think that he's older?
His uncle.
What makes you think he's older?
No, we originally believed he was older because he adopted her. Now he's saying maybe they're close to the age.
Oh, but what makes you say that?
Just what Joel said. If you compare the previous introduction of the structure to now the structure, why this introduction of this structure is that it seems to imply that they could be of similar age. And as we go later in the story, it may come out that Mordecai's concern with her welfare, there's another story behind that.
I got it. I don't see that anywhere in here, but it's an interpretation that if you are going with, I'm happy to hear how it plays out for you for the rest of the Megillah. But I think the one thing here in verse 7 it says bat dodo, but here it says bat avichail. So I think it's still I don't see anything about age, but to be a daughter. Yeah. Okay, Rebecca.
I was wondering about the transformative nature of adoption in general. And in modern times, if Mordecai had legally adopted her, would her name have been changed from Esther bat Avichail to Esther bat Mordecai?
It's a great question.
Or
I don't know.
Does one retain the birth name if known?
Yeah, I don't know back in these days what that would have been like. If someone is adopted today and given a Hebrew name, the name that they are given is of their parents, not their birth parent. So like if you adopt a child and you know that child's birth mother, the baby is not given a Hebrew name based off of that birth mother, but rather the parents that are raising them. So I assume that the answer would be yes, but I don't know if it happens, to go back to Barry's point about age. I don't know, depending on how old Esther may or may not have been, it's possible that she already had a name that she was established with, and so it didn't change, but I don't really know. I'm going to go to Elon really quickly, and then we'll go back in the room.
Yeah, so I have a question about the translation of the word "yet Esther won the admiration of all saw." And the reason I'm asking is, it's as if the fact that she didn't make any requests, they're surprised that gave her admiration. I actually would say, if somebody didn't make any requests, that would give me admiration, meaning that it wouldn't be surprising. Yet means like, in spite of the fact that she didn't ask for anything, they gave her admiration. So I'm wondering, is that in fact the correct translation, or what are they trying to say? And if it is, what are they trying to say by that?
I don't think that I don't know that it's an incorrect translation. It's definitely not an accurate translation. It has interpretation behind it. Vatahi does not mean "and yet." I think what it's trying to do is, in terms of English, I think is just trying to allow us to understand that based off of the first part of the verse, which there's a period in the English here. So based on that first sentence, it then goes into the second part of the sentence with a word that in English would allow us to understand that because of that, the opposite.
It would be like saying so and so had a bad senior year in college, yet he was still a first round draft choice.
Right.
So I'm not sure what they're saying there. What's to me, it's like she didn't ask for anything. Yeah, that's great. That's why she won, or was one of the reasons that she won admiration. It wasn't in spite of the fact that she didn't ask for anything.
Correct. Yeah, I think what you're pointing out is exactly right. Stevie, were you going to speak directly to this, or did you want to say something else?
Related.
Okay, so Stevie's going to say something on it. We'll see if it's what I was just about to point out, and then we'll
just
get back into it.
The word choice of Bikesh as request, I think, is like there's some lovely foreshadowing here, because what it is different from is just a couple verses before where it says whatever the woman wanted would go with her. There it's Kol Asher Tomar, right? But Bikesh in chapter 5, when the king says Ma bikashatech, like, what is your request, right? Like, you've gone this whole time without making one.
So I think that Elon's talking about the word vatehi,
yeah,
not Bikesh. Okay.
Just right. I said it's kind of related, but different. But just saying that the saying that she's not making any requests now, right? Teeing up this, future, like, finally tell me your request. I think it's, nice foreshadowing.
Okay. Is it on this, Stein? Okay. Hold on one second, Norm. Is it specifically on vatehi?
I think so.
Okay, great.
In California, we have ordinary children, stepchildren, adoptive children, foster children, and wards in the case of a guardianship. When we're told that Mordechai adopted and raised her as his child, we don't know the specific details. We do know, however, that the finances might have been complex. We don't know if Mordechai was the only brother of Avichail or the only nephew of Avichail.
Okay.
How many brothers Avichail might have had. So if Hadassah Esther is his sole heir, it's really important to preserve that relationship so that she comes into all of his wealth, even though Mordechai will manage it for her as her guardian. And so, of course, she will keep his name, because that's important to establishing the fact that she really is entitled to his wealth.
Okay, great. That had nothing to do with the word that we're talking about, but that was a lovely comment. It's okay. I just want to make sure that we can finish this for Elon, and then I'm happy to hear all the other comments. Let's just stick on to one topic at a time.
So Benji Siegel translates it. He doesn't translate it as and or yet.
Yeah.
He starts with Esther, but then he says was indeed one.
Oh,
So
interesting.
it's like an intensification.
Okay, so it's interesting. I pulled up Safari because first of all, I think it's good for everybody to understand tools that you also have access to. But I just want you to see what I just pulled up on the side here is the actual translation of the root of the word vatehi. The idea of vatehi is just not directional. It's a time word. Okay, it's a word that's giving us a sense of what is happening and in what time. And in this case, it's future. So she will be, or sometimes it can bring us into the past if it's a vav ha'ipuch, right? So, and she was either, it doesn't mean yet, but it could be that she existed, that she was going to become, that she arose, right? I'm showing you all the different things that Safaria is giving us as examples to where this root comes from. It's not telling us where the word comes from, but just the root of the word. And then it could be that something was kind of set in stone, right? Like it says here to be finished, which you wouldn't say in English, but like it was something that came to be, that she was, it says come to pass, right? I guess that's similar. So Elon, to your point, the idea here that it says yet, I think whoever was doing this translation, which I could look up, I think it's JPS, was giving us this idea that based off of what came before in this verse, and also your college example, right? And yet, Esther, blah, blah, blah. But that actually gives us an interpretation. It doesn't give us the exact translation. The exact translation is, and then she was going to be this person who everyone thought looked nice is basically what the Hebrew is saying. So I just wanted to make sure that we got back to your point, and I want to show everybody how you too can look up what these words might mean. Yeah, Diane.
So the English, I mean, there's two ways to do it. You can put a period.
Right.
And so my question is, when this was written, the Megillah, was it also written with no punctuation, or is it actually written with punctuation?
I assume it was written without punctuation, just given the time. Rick is shaking his head no, but I don't know if that means he disagrees or he's...
No punctuation.
Right. Okay.
In the
I didn't know if you were saying no because you thought that there was punctuation.
Yeah.
Which I'm always happy to be wrong. So I don't think that there was punctuation, and punctuation as far as to go to, letters didn't have vowels. There was definitely no trope, all those things.
So, I mean, part of the translation problem is that English feels like it needs some continuation from what came before if it's part of one verse.
Right. Yeah, that's a very, very good point. Okay, Rick, and then Barry, and then Norm, and then we're gonna go back into the commentary here.
Yeah, I don't think it's been said, so I don't want to miss it, that the other women earlier, 13, right?
Yeah.
The women, when they came, they would be given to take with her whatever she wanted.
Right.
The point here is Esther figured out, well, let me just ask what Haggai thinks I should ask for. So she didn't ask for more than that. I guess she could have,
correct,
but she didn't. So that was the point, that she was following the advice of people in power. So she was learning the ropes.
I think that's where Elon's question originally stems from, or at least the translation originally stems from, is that what the translator wants the reader to understand is that given that she didn't ask for anything, you are correctly remembering that this happened a few verses before, that the women were allowed to bring whatever they felt they needed to bring into the king's chambers, probably to either make them look nicer or smell nicer or have entertainment to make him feel better, whatever it was. The fact that she didn't do any of that, then that English translation comes in to say, and yet Esther won the admiration, of all who saw her. But to Elon's point, that's not actually what the Hebrew says. It's just what the English reader is gaining from this, that if she didn't bring anything with her, she also then became someone who looked really nice in the eyes of all these people. And again, a little bit of an interpretation. People were surprised that she didn't need to bring anything in for that to be the case. So that's where that big word "yet" comes into play. Barry.
So continuing on this word, playing on the word no seichen, that she didn't ask for anything, and it'll come out later. Spoiler alert!
No seichen is not those words. Do you want me to show you the words that is? No seichen is that she was made to have grace in the eyes of those who saw her. But are you looking for the words that she didn't bring anything with her? Lo biksha davar are those words.
Overlook the word issue.
Okay.
And then the issue that she did not need or request anything.
Yeah.
I'm speaking to that.
Great.
That it will come out later. Spoiler alert! In the Megillah on this, which is basically the Talmud is trying to canonize this whole story, and the only way they can canonize it is that there's some hidden hand of God involved here. And what they're saying is that she didn't really aggressively want this position. She wasn't pushing herself into this. The other women would ask for all kinds of stuff to make them, get one of the lines. She didn't really want to do anything about this. So it wasn't her that was doing it. It was the storyline behind this that was pushing her forward.
Nice. Okay. Whoa. Okay. Joel, and then I'm just trying to see where the microphones are. And then Larry, and then Alan, and then Norm.
I'm just
in 5 minutes, just so you all know.
If we're talking musical theater, the musical I reminds me of is Gypsy.
True.
They each have these gimmicks, right?
Yeah.
And she doesn't have gimmicks, and she's the one that's most admired.
Nice. Are you also going to mention a musical? This could just be a class about musicals. I'd be very good at teaching that. Okay, great.
No, I had a whole bunch of stuff to say about Avichail.
Yeah, sure.
But I'm going to save no.
Oh, no.
It's interesting. You just look up Avichail in the Bible, and you'll find a lot of interesting stuff there too.
Okay.
Barry and I are obviously keep going back and forth.
Yeah.
And all commentary is good, right? So it's not a question of. So I go, okay, maybe it's not all good, but I don't want to. Barry and I have different points of view about this. I think that this verse is constructing the narrative I've been talking about, which is Mordecai conspiring with Haggai. He was walking outside, and with Esther in order to make sure that she acted. Go back to the previous verses where I talked about that Mordecai was first of all, Haggai she found favor in Haggai's eyes. He took good care of her. Mordecai goes and visits. We presume it's Haggai and says, take care of her. All the other women, as Barry is pointing out, they do all these things that they want to do, all these extra stuff. But she's following the advice of Mordecai specifically, which is why it repeats the reference to Mordecai and Mordecai having Avichail being
the father,
being the uncle. So it's all, to me, this verse is pointing to this is all being manipulated, not by God, being manipulated by Mordecai and Esther, who's faithfully following his instructions.
Okay, Alan.
That may be, Larry, that may be a possibility, because the key point is that she just listens to what Haggai says. And that's what she's doing. But that's also the someone who's actually very smart, not to take anything else, but Haggai would know what the king would want. And so she's savvy enough, perhaps, as to say, I'm not gonna whatever Haggai says is something that will make sense for me to do. I don't want to have overkill. I don't want to underkill. Whatever he tells me, that's what I'll do.
That's a good point. Yeah, great point.
Esther has been brought up taking advice and instruction from Mordecai. Moreover, Mordecai, Avichail, and Esther are descendants of King Saul. She has a royal countenance and grace, which the book of Esther gives significant credibility to. And so she's accustomed to taking advice, especially when it makes some sense. She gets Haggai's advice. She knows he's very trustworthy for her. She follows that advice to great success, and she has a certain understated elegance, which we would expect from someone of her status.
Great. Wow, you all did that so well. I gave you 5 minutes and you took 3.5. Leonard.
I just decided to look up Avichail here.
Oh, okay, great.
It turns out there are 5 different people named Avichail in the Bible,
Right.
both male and female.
Good. Yeah.
I don't think any of them are gender neutral.
Okay. Right. So it does seem, and we just don't have time to go into this right this second, but it does seem that it's pertinent for us to understand who Avichail could have been. And what I'm going to suggest is that Avichail could have been any of these other 5 characters. It's also possible that Avichail was just a name given to someone who needed to a character whose name we don't actually know, but who needed a name to kind of have that position named, for lack of redundancy. Right, could have been Shmuley, could have been Moshe, could have been whatever we want him to be, or it was his name, right? But the reason that I'm pointing that out is because and maybe this is what Larry was going to bring up, it is not a name that is unknown to the reader, nor unknown to someone who has experience reading Megillah, right? This is a name that people have heard before. Part of the reason that I said it reminds you of the name Abigail is because it is a name that comes up as being these different characters who could have been male or female. And so the idea that it's also a name that means the father of a soldier, maybe Esther's that soldier, right? So I just wanted to put that out there for us. Yes, a father of a man of valor. Good. Eshet Chayil. Wow. Very good, Larry. Yeah, that's very good. Okay, well, on that note, I will leave you. We will go into verse 16 next week. Have a great week, everyone.
You've been listening to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth Am, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles. If you enjoy these podcasts, we invite you to write a review on the Apple Podcast website or wherever you get your podcasts. For more information on Temple Beth Am, Los Angeles, please visit www.tbala.org.